The Persian general's head was still screaming when the Spartan ripped his spine out through his throat. This wasn't metaphor. This wasn't Hollywood exaggeration. This was August 479 BCE, on a blood-soaked plain outside the Greek city of Plataea, and the Spartans who had watched their king and 299 brothers die at Thermopylae 1 year earlier were finally getting their revenge. And they were taking it with a savagery that would shock even by ancient warfare standards. I need you to forget everything you think you know about the Battle of Plataea. Forget the sanitized textbook version that calls it the decisive Greek victory that ended the Persian invasion. Forget the brief mention it gets in the shadow of Thermopylae's more famous last stand. What I'm about to tell you is the real story, reconstructed from Herodotus's eyewitness accounts, archaeological evidence, and Persian records that survived the battle. This is the story of the largest hoplite army ever assembled. Over 100,000 Greek soldiers, with 10,000 Spartans at their core, facing 300,000 Persian troops in a battle that would determine whether Western civilization would be Greek or Persian, democratic or autocratic, free or enslaved. This is the story of how those 10,000 Spartans, led by Pausanias, nephew of the fallen King Leonidas, spent an entire year preparing for one purpose: to make the Persians pay in blood for every Spartan who died at Thermopylae. They weren't fighting for Greece. They weren't fighting for freedom. They were fighting for revenge. Pure, cold, calculated revenge. And when the battle finally came, when 10,000 Spartans in perfect phalanx formation crashed into the Persian lines like a bronze tsunami, what happened next was less a battle and more an execution. A massacre. A brutal, systematic annihilation that the Spartans had been dreaming about for 365 days. The Persians lost approximately 257,000 men at Plataea. The Greeks lost fewer than 1,500. Those numbers aren't just victory, their vengeance made mathematics. Let me show you how it happened. The news reached Sparta on the third day after Thermopylae fell. A single messenger, covered in blood and dust, staggered through the city gates and collapsed in the agora. His message was 3 words: Leonidas is dead. What followed wasn't the stoic acceptance of military loss that Spartan mythology suggests. What followed was rage. Pure, incandescent, civilizational rage. You need to understand what Leonidas meant to Sparta. He wasn't just a king. He was the embodiment of everything Spartan culture valued: courage, tactical genius, absolute commitment to the state. And he'd been killed, along with 299 of Sparta's finest warriors, in a delaying action that had bought Greece time but hadn't stopped the Persian advance. The Spartans wanted blood, specifically Persian blood, and they wanted it in quantities that would make the gods themselves take notice. But here's where Spartan discipline proved more terrifying than Spartan rage. They didn't rush out seeking immediate revenge. They planned. They prepared. They turned their grief into a weapon as sharp as their spears. Pausanias, Leonidas's nephew and regent for his young son, took command of Sparta's military. He was 25 years old, already a veteran of multiple campaigns, and now carrying the weight of avenging his uncle's death. The ancient sources describe him as cold, calculating, and absolutely obsessed with the coming confrontation with Persia. He spent the year after Thermopylae doing 3 things. First, he trained. The Spartan army already had the most rigorous training regimen in the ancient world, the Avenge system that turned boys into warriors. But Pausanias intensified it. He drilled his 10,000 Spartans in phalanx formation until they could execute complex maneuvers without verbal commands, responding only to trumpet signals and the positioning of their officers. He trained them specifically for fighting Persians. The Persian army relied on archers, light cavalry, and overwhelming numbers. The Spartan phalanx was designed to negate all 3 advantages. Pausanias made sure every Spartan could maintain formation under arrow fire, could execute the Othismos push that would break through lighter-armed troops, could fight in the crushing press of close combat where Spartan discipline and superior armor would dominate. Second, he built alliances. Sparta couldn't defeat 300,000 Persians alone. Pausanias needed the other Greek city-states to contribute soldiers. He traveled to Athens, to Corinth, to Tegea, to Megara, to every significant Greek polis, and made the case for unified resistance. His argument was simple and brutal. The Persians are coming back. They burned Athens. They desecrated your temples. They enslaved your women and children. They killed my uncle and 299 Spartans who died buying you time to prepare. Now it's time to make them pay. Join us, or when Persia comes for you next, you'll stand alone. It worked. By summer 479 BCE, Pausanias had assembled an army of over 100,000 Greek hoplites, the largest unified Greek force ever created. Athens contributed 8,000 hoplites. Corinth sent 5,000. Megara, Tegea, or Commonus, and dozens of smaller city-states sent contingents. But the core, the elite, the shock troops that would decide the battle, were Pausanias's 10,000 Spartans. They weren't the largest contingent, but everyone understood they were the most lethal. Third, Pausanias studied his enemy. Sparta had intelligence networks throughout the Aegean, and Pausanias used them to learn everything possible about the Persian commander, Mardonius, and his tactical methods. Mardonius was brilliant, experienced, and ruthless. He'd been fighting for Persia since before most of the Greek soldiers were born. He understood Greek warfare, had defeated Greek armies before, and wouldn't make the mistakes that had cost Persia victory at Marathon 10 years earlier. But Mardonius had one weakness: arrogance. He believed Persian numerical superiority would eventually overwhelm Greek discipline. He'd told the Persian king Xerxes that the Greeks were brave but predictable, that their phalanx formation was powerful but inflexible, that superior Persian mobility would eventually find and exploit weaknesses. Pausanias planned to use that arrogance against him. As spring 479 BCE arrived and campaign season opened, as scouts reported that Mardonius was moving his massive army north from Athens toward Boeotia, as Greek city-states sent their contingents marching toward the assembly point, Pausanias gave his Spartans one final speech. Ancient sources don't record his exact words, but they agree on the message. For Leonidas. For the 300. For every Spartan who died buying Greece this chance. We march to Plataea not as liberators, but as avengers. The Persians will learn what it costs to kill Spartans. They will learn in blood and screaming. They will learn in ways that will echo for centuries. Today we march. In 1 month, we teach Persia the meaning of Spartan vengeance. The army began its march north. 10,000 Spartans in perfect formation, red cloaks streaming, bronze armor gleaming, moving with the mechanical precision of a machine designed for killing. They were about to show the world what happened when you wounded Sparta and gave it a year to sharpen its response. By late July 479 BCE, 2 enormous armies were converging on the Boeotian plain near the city of Plataea. The Greeks approached from the south, the Persians from the north. For days, scouts from both sides tracked enemy movements, commanders made calculations about terrain and timing, and soldiers prepared mentally for the bloodbath everyone knew was coming. The Persian force was staggering. Mardonius commanded approximately 300,000 men, the largest army ever assembled for a single campaign in ancient Greek history. This included 50,000 Persian regulars, the elite troops of the empire. Another 50,000 Medes, expert horsemen and archers. Contingents from across the Persian Empire, Bactrians, Indians, Sakai, Egyptians. And crucially, about 50,000 Greek allies, city-states that had submitted to Persia and now fought alongside them. This wasn't just quantity. This was quality and diversity. The Persian army included cavalry that could outflank infantry, archers that could rain death from a distance, light troops that could harass and retreat, and heavy infantry that could hold ground. It was a combined arms force centuries ahead of its time. The Greek army was smaller, but terrifying in its own way. Pausanias commanded approximately 110,000 men, but these weren't just soldiers. They were hoplites, the most feared heavy infantry in the ancient world. The breakdown was strategic. 10,000 Spartans and 5,000 perioikoi, Spartan allies, formed the right wing, the position of honor in Greek battle formation. Athens contributed 8,000 hoplites who would hold the left wing. The center consisted of soldiers from dozens of city-states, Corinth, Megara, Tegea, and smaller polis, each contingent maintaining its own formation within the larger army. But numbers don't capture what made this army special. These men had spent the past year training together, drilling in combined maneuvers, learning to coordinate movements across different city-states. This level of Greek unity was unprecedented. Normally, Greek city-states were too busy fighting each other to cooperate effectively against external threats. Pausanias had forged them into something new, a unified Greek army with Spartan discipline at its core. The armies met on a plain bisected by the Asopus River. The terrain was crucial, relatively flat ground that favored the Persian cavalry's mobility, but with hills on the flanks that could protect Greek infantry from being completely surrounded. There were also ridges where Greek hoplites could take defensive positions that would force Persians to attack uphill. For 11 days, the armies faced each other across the river without engaging in full battle. This wasn't hesitation, it was psychological warfare and tactical positioning. Mardonius sent his cavalry on raids, trying to disrupt Greek supply lines and provoke them into breaking formation. Persian archers would loose volleys at the Greek lines, trying to inflict casualties and test their discipline under fire. The Greeks, especially the Spartans, stood motionless behind their shields, taking arrow casualties without breaking ranks. This was exactly what Pausanias had trained them for. Let the Persians waste arrows. Let them think the Greeks were passive. When the real battle came, the Persians would learn the difference between stillness and death. But the stalemate couldn't last. Both armies were consuming enormous amounts of supplies. Soldiers were getting restless. The longer this continued, the more chance disease, desertion, or logistical collapse would decide the outcome instead of battle. Mardonius made the first major move. On the 11th night, he sent his cavalry to destroy the Gargaphia Spring, the Greeks' main water source. It was a brilliant tactical strike. Without water, the Greek army would have to either attack on Persian terms or retreat in disarray. Pausanias called a council of war. The Greek commanders debated their options: stay and risk dying of thirst, retreat and risk being slaughtered during the withdrawal, or attack immediately and risk fighting on ground the Persians had chosen. Pausanias proposed something else, a strategic redeployment at night. The Greeks would pull back to a position with better access to water and more defensible terrain. It was risky. Moving a 110,000-man army at night could easily dissolve into chaos, but staying was suicide. The order went out. The army would begin pulling back after midnight, moving in stages to avoid confusion. The Athenians would move first, then the center contingents, then finally the Spartans would serve as rear guard. But something went wrong. Catastrophically wrong. One of the Greek commanders, a Megarian named Amampharidas, refused to move his contingent. He declared it was shameful for Spartans to retreat, that Leonidas would never have withdrawn. His insubordination created chaos in the Greek lines. By dawn, instead of being in a new defensive position, the Greek army was strung out across several miles, different contingents in different locations, the perfect formation that had taken months to create now fragmented and vulnerable. Mardonius saw his opportunity. The disciplined Greek army that had terrified him for 11 days was suddenly in disarray. He ordered the full Persian army to attack. The Battle of Plataea was about to begin, and it would begin with the Greeks at their most vulnerable. Dawn on August 27th, 479 BCE broke over a Greek army in chaos. The careful formations that Pausanias had spent a year perfecting were scattered across miles of terrain. The Athenians were separated from the Spartans. The center contingents were strung out and exposed. And the 10,000 Spartans, who were supposed to be the anvil upon which Persian attacks would shatter, were isolated and vulnerable. Mardonius saw this and struck immediately. He ordered his cavalry forward in a massive wave, targeting the exposed Greek contingents in the center. Persian horsemen swept across the plain, launching arrows, throwing javelins, cutting down Greek soldiers who couldn't maintain proper phalanx formation while scattered and disorganized. The center contingents, men from Megara, Phlius, and other smaller city-states, took brutal casualties. They were brave, well-trained hoplites, but hoplite warfare required formation. Isolated and harassed by mobile cavalry, they were being slaughtered. Pausanias faced an impossible decision. His plan was in ruins. His army was scattered. The Persians were exploiting every weakness. He could try to continue the withdrawal and hope to regroup, but that would mean abandoning the center contingents to massacre. Or he could commit the Spartans to battle immediately, hoping their elite discipline could stabilize the situation. He chose to fight. The trumpet signal rang out across the Spartan lines, "Prepare for combat." 10,000 Spartans who had been conducting a fighting retreat suddenly stopped, turned, and dressed their lines with mechanical precision. In under 3 minutes, they transformed from a scattered rear guard into a perfect phalanx formation 8 ranks deep. This was what they'd trained for. This was what the entire year of preparation had been building toward. The moment when Spartan discipline would collide with Persian numbers, when the question of which military system was superior, Greek heavy infantry or Persian combined arms, would be answered in blood. Pausanias stood in the front rank, easily identifiable by his helmet crest and position. He raised his spear and shouted the command that every Spartan had been waiting to hear for 365 days. Advance! The Spartan phalanx began moving forward. Not running, that would break formation. Walking. A steady, mechanical advance that made the earth shake. 10,000 men in perfect synchronization, shields locked, spears leveled, moving like a single organism designed for one purpose: killing. The Persians saw them coming and responded exactly as Mardonius had drilled them to do. The cavalry pulled back. Persian archers moved forward, positioning themselves in range. And then they released. Thousands of arrows darkened the sky. The famous Persian archery, the weapon that had conquered empires from Egypt to India, descended on the Spartan phalanx in waves of death. And the Spartans didn't stop walking. Arrows hit shields and shattered. Arrows found gaps in armor and drew blood. Men fell, wounded or dead, and the ranks behind them closed the gaps instantly. The phalanx didn't slow, didn't break formation, didn't show any sign that thousands of projectiles were slamming into it. This was Spartan warfare at its most terrifying. Not individual heroics, but collective inevitability. The phalanx was a machine, and individual casualties didn't stop machines. The Persian archers released volley after volley. The Spartans kept walking. Then the Spartans hit javelin range, and the dynamic shifted. The rear ranks of the phalanx began launching javelins over the heads of the front ranks. These weren't the light skirmishing javelins used by other armies. These were heavy penetrating weapons designed to punch through shields and armor. Persian archers started falling. Their light armor, perfect for mobility, offered little protection against hoplite javelins. Mardonius, watching from his command position, saw that his archers were being neutralized. He ordered his heavy infantry forward, the Persian immortals, the elite 10,000-man unit that was supposed to be the empire's answer to Greek hoplites. The immortals advanced to meet the Spartans. These were the best Persian soldiers, professional warriors with scale armor, spears, and wicker shields. They outnumbered the Spartans and had the advantage of fresh troops engaging an enemy that had been marching and taking arrow casualties. The two formations met with a crash that could be heard miles away. Bronze smashing into bronze, wood splintering against wood. 10,000 Spartans against 10,000 immortals. And within minutes, it was clear this wasn't going to be a fair fight. What happened when the Spartan phalanx collided with the Persian immortals wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration of why Spartan infantry dominated ancient warfare for 2 centuries. The Persian immortals were elite troops. They were experienced, disciplined, well-equipped. But they'd trained to fight in the Persian style. Individual combat, mobility, relying on archers and cavalry to soften enemies before engagement. The Spartans fought as a single entity. The phalanx wasn't 10,000 individual warriors. It was one weapon with 10,000 sharp edges. In the front rank, Spartans locked shields into a bronze wall. Their spears, 8 feet long, projected forward in perfect alignment. When they thrust simultaneously. When they pushed, the entire formation moved as one. The Persians couldn't match this. Their wicker shields, lighter and more maneuverable for individual combat, couldn't stand against the combined force of the Spartan push. Their spears, designed for throwing in individual combat, couldn't match the coordinated spear wall of the phalanx. Herodotus, who interviewed survivors from both sides, describes what happened. The Persians were not inferior in courage or strength, but they lacked proper arms and, more importantly, they lacked the skill and discipline of their opponents. They fought individually while the Spartans fought as one. The physics of phalanx combat were brutal. In the Othismos, the push, the weight and momentum of 8 ranks of armored men would surge forward. The front rank didn't need to be individually superior fighters. They just needed to hold formation while the mass behind them drove forward like a hydraulic press. Persians in the front rank found themselves crushed between Spartan shields and their own men behind them. They couldn't retreat without breaking their formation. They couldn't advance because the Spartan wall was immovable. And they couldn't fight effectively because they didn't have room to use their weapons. The Spartans, meanwhile, fought with mechanical efficiency. Front-rank soldiers would thrust spears through gaps in the shield wall, not aiming for specific targets but simply projecting death into the Persian formation. When a Spartan in the front rank fell, the man behind him would step forward instantly, maintaining the integrity of the line. This was how Spartans were trained to die, not as tragic heroes, but as replaceable components in a machine. Your death didn't matter as long as the phalanx kept moving. The Persian immortals started breaking. Not from cowardice, they were brave soldiers, but from the psychological impossibility of fighting an enemy that didn't fight like individual humans. The Spartans didn't duel, didn't pursue glory, didn't break formation to chase fleeing enemies. They just kept pushing forward mechanically, inevitably. Persian soldiers who tried to retreat found themselves trampled by their own ranks behind them. Those who stood their ground were crushed against Spartan shields or impaled on Spartan spears. Those who tried to attack were cut down by the coordinated response of multiple Spartans working as a unit. Mardonius, watching his elite immortals being systematically destroyed, made a decision that would cost him everything. He personally led the Persian cavalry in a charge at the Spartan flank, hoping to break their formation through mobile shock tactics. It nearly worked. Cavalry attacking the flank of a phalanx was exactly the scenario where Greek heavy infantry was vulnerable. The Spartans couldn't turn to face the threat without breaking formation, and breaking formation against the immortals in front of them would be suicidal. But Pausanias had anticipated this. He'd positioned the Perioikoi, Spartan allies, in a refused flank position specifically to counter cavalry charges. As Mardonius's cavalry swept in, they found themselves facing a secondary defensive line that forced them to slow their charge and engage in close combat where their mobility advantage was neutralized. The cavalry charge stalled, and in that moment of stalled momentum, Spartan soldiers broke from the main phalanx and counterattacked. Not in disorganized pursuit, but in small, disciplined units that maintained mutual support. Mardonius was in the thick of the fighting, easily identifiable on his white horse, trying to rally his cavalry for another charge. A Spartan soldier, ancient sources name him as Aramnestos, threw a javelin that struck Mardonius in the head, killing him instantly. The Persian commander's death rippled through his army like a shockwave. The immortals, already being pushed back by the Spartan phalanx, saw their general fall and began to retreat. The cavalry, seeing the immortals retreat, pulled back. And the rest of the Persian army, seeing both their elite units withdrawing, started to panic. What had been an organized battle suddenly became a rout. The moment when a battle turns from combat into massacre is specific and recognizable. It's when one side stops fighting and starts fleeing, when formation breaks down completely, when survival instinct overrides military discipline. For the Persian army at Plataea, that moment came when Mardonius died and the immortals broke. Suddenly, 300,000 soldiers who had been confidently attacking a scattered Greek army were instead fleeing in panic from 10,000 Spartans who hadn't even broken formation. And this is where the true revenge began. Pausanias didn't order his Spartans to stop, didn't call for mercy or quarter, didn't try to take prisoners for ransom as was common in Greek warfare. He ordered pursuit. Total, brutal, annihilating pursuit. The Spartans began to run. Not the careful, formation-preserving advance they'd used to reach the Persian lines, but an all-out sprint. They shed their formation and became individual hunters tracking fleeing prey. This was unprecedented in Spartan warfare. Normally, Spartans prized formation discipline above everything else. Breaking formation to pursue fleeing enemies was considered reckless. But these weren't normal Spartans operating under normal circumstances. These were men who'd spent a year watching their king's memory be honored, training for this moment, dreaming of Persian blood. And now the Persians were running, begging for mercy in languages the Spartans didn't understand and wouldn't have cared about if they did. The pursuit was methodical and horrible. Spartans would catch fleeing Persian soldiers and kill them with a brutality that shocked even their Greek allies. Not quick battlefield deaths, but slow, deliberate killing. Herodotus describes Spartans taking vengeance for Leonidas in ways that suggested this wasn't military necessity but ritualized revenge. The Persian army fled toward their fortified camp, a wooden palisade they'd constructed as a fallback position. Tens of thousands of Persian soldiers crowded into this camp, hoping the fortifications would protect them while they regrouped. The Spartans arrived at the camp walls and found themselves in unfamiliar tactical territory. Spartans were trained for open-field battle, not siege warfare. The Persian camp, hastily constructed but solid, presented a problem. Pausanias called for the Athenian contingent. Athens had experience in siege warfare from their naval campaigns. The Athenian hoplites arrived and, working together with the Spartans, began to assault the camp. What followed wasn't a prolonged siege. It was a systematic breaching operation. The Greeks didn't have siege engines, but they didn't need them. They had numbers, discipline, and an enemy that was already demoralized. Greek soldiers began tearing down sections of the wooden palisade, creating breaches. As soon as a breach opened, Spartans would pour through, establishing a foothold inside the camp. Once inside, they'd work to open the gates, allowing more Greeks to flood in. The fighting inside the Persian camp was close, brutal, and one-sided. The Persians were trapped, exhausted, and psychologically broken. Many threw down their weapons and begged for mercy. The Spartans gave none. Herodotus's account of this phase is explicit. The Spartans showed no mercy to the Persians, remembering the 300. They killed until their arms were tired from killing, and then they killed more. The massacre continued for hours. By the time the sun set on August 27th, 479 BCE, the Persian army had effectively ceased to exist. Of the 300,000 soldiers Mardonius had commanded that morning, fewer than 43,000 survived to retreat back toward Asia. The Greek casualties? Approximately 1,500 total. The Spartans lost 91 men. This wasn't a battle. This was an execution. The Spartans had systematically annihilated an army 5 times their size, driven by a revenge motivation so intense it overcame every tactical doctrine they'd ever learned. As dawn broke on August 28th, the Greek army surveyed the battlefield. Bodies covered the plain as far as the eye could see. The Asopus River ran red. The Persian camp was a charnel house of corpses stacked in rooms where they'd been cornered and slaughtered. The Greeks began the grim task of identifying and counting the dead. Greek dead were carefully collected for honorable burial. Each contingent would take their fallen home for proper funeral rites. The Persian dead were left where they fell. Thousands of bodies rotting in the summer heat, a feast for carrion birds, and a warning to any future army that thought to invade Greece. Pausanias, standing amid the carnage, had accomplished what he'd spent a year preparing for. He'd avenged Leonidas. He'd made the Persians pay for Thermopylae in a currency of blood that would have satisfied even Spartan standards of revenge. But victory brought its own complications. The Greek city-states began immediately arguing about credit for the win. Sparta claimed primacy because their contingent had done the bulk of the fighting. Athens claimed equal credit because their hoplites had fought bravely and their siege expertise had been crucial to breaking the Persian camp. Pausanias, showing political wisdom beyond his years, proposed a compromise. The spoils would be divided proportionally among the contingents based on their numbers. A tithe would go to Delphi to thank the gods, and credit for the victory would be shared by all Greeks, with special honor going to both Sparta and Athens. This political settlement was as important as the military victory. It established a framework for Greek cooperation that would influence politics for the next century. The unity that Pausanias had forged in preparation for battle survived the battle itself. The strategic impact of Plataea was enormous. Persia never again attempted a land invasion of mainland Greece. The threat that had loomed over Greek civilization for 2 decades evaporated in a single day of combat. Greek culture, democracy, philosophy, art, theater was free to develop without the constant fear of Persian conquest. Western civilization as we know it exists because 10,000 Spartans spent a year preparing to avenge their king and then executed that vengeance with systematic brutality at Plataea. But the personal impact on the Spartans was complex. They'd achieved the revenge they'd sought. They'd made the Persians pay for Thermopylae in blood beyond counting. They'd proven that Spartan discipline and courage could overcome any numerical odds. Yet they'd also revealed something darker about Spartan culture. The massacre at the Persian camp, the refusal to take prisoners, the systematic killing of men who'd surrendered, these weren't consistent with Greek norms of warfare. Other Greek contingents were disturbed by Spartan brutality, even as they benefited from Spartan victory. Pausanias himself would later be accused of excessive cruelty at Plataea, though the charges were politically motivated and never resulted in formal punishment. But the accusation revealed discomfort with how far the Spartans had gone in pursuit of revenge. The Spartan survivors of Plataea returned home to honors and glory. They'd avenged their king, crushed the greatest empire on earth, and secured Sparta's reputation as the premier military power in Greece. For the next 150 years, "Remember Plataea" would be a rallying cry for Greek unity and Spartan excellence. But they'd also learned something that would shape Spartan culture for generations: that revenge, while satisfying, came at a cost. That the brutality required to systematically annihilate an enemy could damage the soul of the victor. The Spartans who fought at Plataea had become something more and less than human in the pursuit of vengeance. More than human in their discipline and effectiveness. Less than human in their capacity for mercy and restraint. The Battle of Plataea ended the Persian Wars, but its impact echoed through centuries of Western military history. It established principles of warfare that would influence tactical thinking for over 2,000 years. First, it proved the superiority of heavy infantry over light troops when properly deployed and led. The phalanx formation that dominated Plataea would remain the standard military formation in the Mediterranean for the next 300 years until the Roman legion improved upon it. Second, it demonstrated that numerical superiority could be overcome by discipline, training, and tactical excellence. This lesson would be learned and relearned by countless armies facing numerically superior foes. Third, it showed the power of revenge as a military motivator. The Spartans at Plataea fought with an intensity born of personal commitment to avenging their dead. This made them more effective than they would have been fighting for abstract concepts like freedom or glory. But Plataea also revealed the limits and costs of revenge-driven warfare. The systematic brutality the Spartans displayed disturbed their Greek allies and contributed to the political tensions that would eventually lead to the Peloponnesian War. The battle also marked a turning point in Greek self-conception. Before Plataea, Greeks saw themselves as culturally superior to Persians but militarily vulnerable. After Plataea, they saw themselves as militarily invincible. This confidence would drive Greek expansion and cultural flourishing for the next century. For Sparta specifically, Plataea was both the peak of military achievement and the beginning of a slow decline. The city-state had proven its military system was the most effective in the world. But maintaining that effectiveness required dedicating their entire society to producing warriors, which limited their population growth and economic development. Over the following centuries, Sparta would win many battles but slowly lose the demographic war. By 371 BCE, when they were finally defeated at Leuctra, Sparta could field only 1,000 full Spartan citizens, a tenth of the force that fought at Plataea. The 10,000 Spartans who avenged the 300 represented Sparta at its absolute peak, disciplined, motivated, militarily supreme. Their descendants would try to maintain that standard, but would find that excellence sustained by revenge is difficult to maintain once the object of revenge is destroyed. The Battle of Plataea gave the Spartans everything they'd sought: revenge for Thermopylae, victory over Persia, glory that would echo through centuries. They'd proven that Spartan warriors were the finest infantry the world had ever seen. But vengeance, even successful vengeance, comes with costs. The Spartans who fought at Plataea had to become monsters to achieve their revenge. They had to shed the tactical restraint that normally governed Greek warfare. They had to kill men who surrendered, pursue men who fled, massacre men who begged for mercy. They did this willingly because avenging Leonidas mattered more than maintaining civilized norms of warfare. And it worked. The tactical effectiveness of their brutality ended the Persian threat permanently. But it also damaged something essential about Spartan identity. The warriors who returned from Plataea weren't quite the same men who'd marched out seeking vengeance. They'd seen what they were capable of when restraint was abandoned. They'd learned that systematic killing could become routine, even boring. This knowledge would haunt Sparta for generations. The city-state that prized discipline and self-control had revealed that beneath that discipline was a capacity for violence that shocked even their allies. The true legacy of Plataea isn't just that 10,000 Spartans avenged the 300. It's that they showed the world, and themselves, what revenge looks like when pursued with systematic brutality by the most effective killing machine in ancient history. The Persians learned to fear Sparta, but the Spartans learned to fear themselves. And perhaps that's the real lesson of Plataea, that vengeance, even when completely justified, even when brilliantly executed, even when historically necessary, still extracts a cost from those who pursue it. The 10,000 Spartans won their revenge. The Tigris ran black with Persian blood. The 300 were avenged beyond anything their spirits could have demanded. But the men who achieved that vengeance returned home changed. Harder, darker, forever marked by what they'd done in the name of honoring their dead. The Battle of Plataea saved Western civilization. But it also showed what Western civilization was capable of when pushed to its limits. That's a legacy we're still processing 2,500 years later.